Just getting the recording started. Welcome, and inviting a few more folks in who are joining from the waiting room. All right. Welcome everyone to the Switzer Fellowship information session. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and join us today. Before I share anything else, I wanted to note that we are recording this session. You probably saw that pop up because we want to be able to share it with anyone who is not able to join live today. So just so that you know that that is happening, you're welcome to keep your cameras off if you would like. That is something that is totally up to you. My name is Maya, and I use she, her pronouns, and I am based in my hometown on the unceded Tiwa and Tewa land, also known as Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I am very excited to be here with you all today. I am currently the program manager for Switzer. I just started in this role last spring. So this is my first info session with you all. And I have truly loved being a part of this fellowship. So I'm excited to share more about that with you. We are joined by two of our recent fellows today, Sebastian and Vida, and I will pass it to them in a little bit to introduce themselves and share more about their experience. And we also have Cora, one of my lovely coworkers, on here with us today. And so, Cora, I'll pass it to you if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Maya. Good to be here with you all. I'm so glad that you're all able to make it to this session. Like Maya said, my name is Cora Preston. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the network manager for the Switzer Foundation. My job is to manage the foundation communications and cultivate community within the Switzer network of fellows and fellow alumni. Today I am here to manage the Zoom meeting. So if you're having any technical difficulties throughout, please let me know in the chat and I will try to help you. Also, please enter your questions for Vida and Sebastian or Maya and myself in the chat. And I will then read out questions during the Q&A portion of this session. And I will just try to keep an eye on that. So feel free to chime in on the chat with anything that you need help with during the session. And I'll keep a running track of questions as we go, so you do not have to save them all for the Q&A period. That's all from me. Back to you, Maya.
Thanks, Cora. Just so everyone knows what our flow is looking like today, I'm going to give a little bit of background information on the fellowship and the selection process, and then pass it over to Vida and Sebastian to share a bit more about their experience. And most of the time will remain open for your questions. So this conversation might go a lot of different ways depending on what is alive and of interest for you all. But the Robert and Patricia Switzer Foundation was started back in 1986 by Robert and Patricia Switzer with proceeds from the sale of the Dayglow Paint Corporation. And if you want to know more about the history of the foundation and read the donor legacy statement, it's all on our website. And I encourage you to check it out and learn more about how this foundation has evolved over the years. But the goal of the foundation was to support graduate students who were studying applied environmental science fields in developing their leadership to tackle increasingly complex environmental challenges. And as the foundation and the fellowship has evolved over the years, that has expanded outside of the initial realm of quote unquote, like academic hard sciences towards including a lot of social sciences and looking broadly at the intersection of environmental issues with social issues. And so now our alumni work in all different fields. They're teachers and policy experts and lawyers and academics and government officials, in all different careers. And we have over 750 fellows in our network. And a big part of this fellowship program being part of our larger network. And a lot of the work that we do is focused on connecting our fellows with each other so that they can have support systems and different people to co-learn and work alongside throughout the course of their career. As you probably have already seen in researching this fellowship, the main criteria for becoming a Switzer Fellow are that you are currently in a graduate school program based in one of the 6 New England states or California, and you must be enrolled for the full academic year next year, so 2025 through 2026, and that you are focusing on environmental issues in a broad sense. And the benefits of the fellowship include a $17,000 cash award, engagement with the Switzer network, and access to our other grant programs focused on building your career beyond the initial fellowship year, where you get the cash award and participate in 2 retreats with your cohort. Our selection process is entirely driven by our fellows. There are 3 tiers in the selection process, and the goal is to have as many fellows as possible with as many different perspectives as part of the decision-making process. So in the first tier, 2 fellows review your application using the rubric that you can see online. Highly encourage you all to check that out. And 80 applications will go on to the second tier from that first tier of review. In the second tier, there's a new set of eyes, also Switzer Fellows, who review those 80 applications and ultimately move forward 20 applicants from New England and 20 from California onto the interview phase. And the interviews, again, conducted by Switzer Fellows. And from there, we end up selecting 10 finalists from New England and 10 from California who become Switzer Fellows that year. So that was general background. Again, you can find all of that on our website. But I want to pass it over to Sebastian and Vita because they have all the best intel for you all since they have been through this process themselves. So first, I'd ask you all, Sebastian and Vita, if you could introduce yourself, sharing your name, your Switzer year, the program area of study that you were involved in, and what you are doing now. And I'll start with Sebastian, and then if you want to kick it off to Vita when you're ready.
Sure thing. Hey, everyone. My name is Sebastian Moreno. I use the he pronoun series. I am in my 5th year at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, getting my PhD in environmental conservation. I focus on urban ecology, ornithology, and human dimensions, focusing on social and environmental justice. This is why I needed the questions. Did I do an introduction?
That was great.
Awesome. Whoa,
Fireworks.
You're up.
Amazing. Hi everyone. It's great to see you all. My name is Vida. My pronouns are she, they, ella. And I was a 2023 fellow 2023, that's right, with Sebastian. And I was studying at UC Davis, getting in the master's program with the degree in environmental engineering. And my research at the time was around domestic wells in the Central Valley of California, understanding water quality, and I'm currently working with the Community Water Center in the rural Central Coast of California, doing similar work, working with mostly migrant farm working communities to organize and build power, as well as support the decision making around safe water solutions. It's great to see you all.
Both for starting off with an introduction. The first question that I wanted to ask you is, what would you have liked to know as a potential applicant when you were applying for the Switzer Fellowship?
Peter, if you don't mind, I have one. If I could buy you some more time to think. For me, I mean, this is all about leadership, and that's like a huge emphasis, but I think I needed someone specifically to emphasize that to me. So I actually was awarded the fellowship in my second try in applying. So the first time, I really had a difficult time putting myself first, not my research, which is kind of hard for me to do because all I do is my research. So I wish I would have known to really focus on who I am as a person and who I am as a leader and what leader means to me, and how I show up in spaces, and then how I use my research to be a leader. I think that would have been very helpful in not only formulating my application, but also in the interview process.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sebastian. Um, for me, I find myself really what led me to like apply for Switzer was like the funding that it would provide, like it is significant, especially as a graduate student. Um, and at the same time, I think I would have wanted to know just how valuable the network is and like the relationships that are formed with other leaders like Sebastian. Um, it really is like a vast network of many decades of environmental leaders that you know you get to contact and get to have informational interviews with and relate to through network gatherings of both established professionals and emerging leaders through supporting with interviews and like applicants and getting to meet people like all of you. Um, it's just really beautiful to be able to connect with people across disciplines and across the United States and beyond. So yeah, I'd say like the value of the relationships of just really outstanding environmental justice leaders is very invaluable. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. And I think I saw a raised hand come up at some point, and I have two more questions for Sebastian and Vita, and then we will start responding to questions. So feel free to enter them in the chat as we go along, and then we'll make sure to get to those so that you don't have to remember them in your brain. Next question for you all is, how has the fellowship impacted you?
Do you want to take this one first, Vito?
Sure. Yeah, again, like the financial support was really significant at that point. That had like a big impact, but again, there was like it went a lot deeper in terms of the community that I got from it and friendships and relationships that I still have after be like beyond my fellowship year. Um, through informational interviews of former Switzer fellows, I think just like having the fact that you were like a part of this program and that have this like shared experience with other people, um yeah, it like does a lot to be able to connect with people specifically within my field within water justice. It's what helped to like connect me through an email to the job that I work in now, to the community water center. So it was through an informational interview with a 2009 fellow um, that helped to connect me. So like those kinds of connections um, have impacted me, and that I found a job as a result of it. I'm also a leadership grant recipient, which is another program that Switzer has um, for people making changes in their careers or going into new careers, and yeah, like that gave a big incentive for my current um yeah employer to work with me. um Again, yeah, a lot of close friendships. There are other like grant opportunities, like the Professional Development Fund grant that provides funding for the ability to go seek professional development opportunities and networking. So, anyways, I feel as though the opportunities that Switzer has available are feel very endless, and it does go, I think, far beyond the fellowship year, and I feel like I'm a Switzer fellow for life. And I hope that answers that question. I'm going to pass it to Sebastian.
Yeah, thank you. A lot of similar thoughts. I feel like the Switzer has been a gift that keeps on giving. The first gift that I received was my cohort. It felt, man, the amount of times that I cried. It felt very therapeutic being around my cohort. It was it was people from various walks of life. It was people that there wasn't this layer of explaining that I had to do in my conversations with them. It was just like they understood where I was coming from at all times, which was, it felt very validating. It also felt very validating hearing people's journeys and hearing that it's a similar journey that I'm going through, or, it's a similar, thought process that I have. So just being able to connect with these individuals, like Vita said, like even outside of our fellowship year, now a year, 2 years out, we still do keep in touch and we still do provide that support that we provided during our cohort. And then at the Switzer at large, this network is just massive. Like Maya said, 750 people. The amount of Switzer fellows that I have connected with, whether on purpose or by accident, where we're just chatting and then out of nowhere, we're like, you're a Switzer fellow? You're a Switzer fellow? Oh my goodness. And then we just like go into this different level of conversing. Yeah, and I feel like the Switzer Fellowship in itself is one of those few organizations that actually is there and provides continuous support. It's not, after this 12-month period, thanks for coming, have a great one, we'll see you later. No, I mean, I get emails from Cora like every other day with information. It's just wonderful.
All right, I have one more question, and I see there's some questions for you all coming in the chat. This one is, what is the top piece of advice you would give to current applicants?
I think I'm gonna go with back to like kind of tying it to I wish I would have known this before. Really be confident in yourself. And like you bring a lot to the table. And I felt like as I applied, it was a way of celebrating myself, and all the accomplishments and achievements that I've done, that I've potentially downplayed, or even those efforts that I feel like are just uphill battles. Seeing other people in very similar circles doing very similar things, it felt really, really rewarding. And then I'll just pass it over to Vita.
Yeah, I'd recommend having friends read your application and support you through your process. Your peers, they could be mentors, just sort of like relying on your community to support you through your application. I would recommend also reaching out to um, former Switzer recipients and former Switzer, or like I guess Switzer fellows that are beyond their fellowship year, or have already gone through it recently. They can have a lot of information about what the application process is like, and help to guide you. I'd recommend also becoming familiar with the materials on the website. There's many materials that can support. It's very like I have to commend Switzer on being so transparent on the selection process, that all of the evaluation rubrics can be found online, and I would have those in mind as you're working to tell your story, and yeah, like give some guidance to the way that you write and how you think about this process.
Great, thank you both. And for those who are watching this recording later, Cora just shared something in the chat, but you can find it on our website. If you don't know any other Switzer Fellows, you can go on our website and ask to be connected to a Switzer Fellow who then can support you in your application process. And Cora, I'll pass it over to you to open up the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vita and Sebastian, for sharing. We have a question about, we'll start with this question for you, Maya. How applied does the applicant's research need to be? So this person provided an example, someone doing a PhD in earth sciences, studying ancient climate formation on Earth via theoretical means, and they're not doing the applied element of that, but it could like set the stage for future applied work. Um, you know, does that kind of meet the criteria for applied research?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a lot of different ways that we could dissect the word applied and what that means. Um, what I would say is we like to support a really broad range of environmental expertise, which means that we're not a single issue funder. We're not looking for only one way of applying what you're studying in your graduate program to the world, but we are looking for you to have an interest in applying what you're studying to be a leader in the field of environmental change in the world. And so that if you have a goal and a vision for how you will apply what you are learning after you complete your graduate program, that would be really important and meaningful to uplift in the application, because the application reviewers will be looking for that, not only because that tells the story of who you are and what you're interested in and what kind of leader you're looking to grow into, but also because it helps them make a picture in their minds of what kind of work that you hope to do. And so the more clear you can get on that for yourself, the better your application will likely do throughout the selection process. In that example that Cora gave, I would say that the most important thing is that your work has an environmental lens, and it's good if you can show the social justice implications of your work. And so both of those things are really important in your studies and your knowledge and in your application. And then from that, again, how do you want to apply that in the future? So if you're studying in a more theoretical field, our goal is not necessarily to fund folks who want to stay in theory for the rest of their career, but instead, how will you take what you're studying and then apply that in the world? Hopefully that answers your question. So happy to chat more about that if you want to email me as well.
Thank you, Maya. This is a question for Vida and Sebastian. Would you be willing to discuss your experience going through the various steps of the application and acceptance process?
Yeah, I guess I'll give you like a quick overview, and then maybe we can dive into specifics if there's time of like what exactly you want to know. But I think I started my application around this time of the year, just reaching out to Switzer fellows. Fortunately, in the University of Massachusetts, there are a couple of Switzer fellows, so my network on reaching out to those folks was very accessible. So I just kind of reached out to them, their experience. I also, then around January, I submitted whenever the deadline was for us. And that was kind of it until we started hearing back for rounds in interviews. And for the interview process, I actually, through our university, kind of did the Office of Professional Development just to like get some interview experience, just because I've been in academia my whole life. I don't really do a lot of interviews to begin with, so more so just trying to get rid of those nerves. And just remembering that this wasn't about my science. Like that was, again, I wasn't here to talk about birds. I wasn't here to talk about urban ecology as much. So really remembering to keep that lens on leadership. And then, yeah, after the interview process, you just waited to hear back from the fellowship, whether you did it or you didn't get it, and then just moving on from there. One thing I will say, in my first year when I was not awarded the fellowship, I got immediate feedback. I reached out, I was like, hey, thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. Is there feedback on ways that I can improve for next year? And I received very poignant advice on like, here is where you really like didn't connect the dots too well. It'd be great if you apply next year to see a full picture of like how you're showing up. And I did exactly that, and it paid off in the second year.
And I'll just jump in real quick before you share, Vita. Something that I want to add on the feedback approach is that we actually really encourage you all to look at the rubric that the applications are evaluated on, because when we've shared feedback in the past, it's often been just referring people back to the rubric. And so I would encourage you all to look at that ahead of time and maybe even do what Vita mentioned, like share your application and the rubric with a friend or an advisor or someone that you work with and have them figure out like which pieces are missing in the application, because most likely you really hold all of those pieces as an individual. And the trick is getting it into the story so that those lines are drawn really clearly in the application. And so please go online and take a look at that evaluation rubric. And Vita, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, you stole the words right out of my mouth, Maya. That's exactly it. Like I find that, knowing your audience, knowing the way that the readers are going to be looking at your application, is a huge advantage, and a really, it's not something that you know, every application allows or does. So that transparency really, I think, contributes a level of, yeah, like at least what I perceived as fairness to the process. Um, and in terms of my experience, yeah, I am similar to Sebastian, that I didn't have a lot of interview experience going in, um, not having really worked and joined the workforce at that point beyond academia. Um, so I think like preparing practice questions for myself and like potential questions that would be asked was really helpful, and kind of creating kind of an idea of in terms of the interview process, what that would be like for the actual written application. It was really helpful to focus on how I could tell a story through my experiences, and connect intangible ideas of my care for the environment, my care for my community, through my story and through my journey. And I think that helped me to like think specifically about which stories I wanted to tell. Is like, I guess, kind of thinking first about what you want the reader to learn from you. So I think that's a good place to start, is thinking about, what it is that you want Switzer to know about you, and what are the qualities that you want to show. And then you can, I think, from there backtrack to think about what stories are good examples of that. So I hope that answers that question. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Vita, Sebastian, and Maya for answering that. We have another question for Sebastian and Vita. Who did you ask to write your recommendation letters?
I could take that one. I asked my research mentor, my direct project advisor, um, and yeah, that was in terms of actually finding, people that could write that. It was fairly straightforward for me, because I had a few different advisors and mentors that I felt knew my research well and that knew me well. So that was a good fit.
Yeah, similar to Vida. I asked my academic advisors, and I asked my supervisor from my internship, just people that could really speak well on my behalf, not only in the work that I do, but also in how I'm showing up into these spaces, again, as a leader. Just really think about who can really speak well on your behalf and speak in detail, not just Sebastian is really good, he is a great person to work with. Just, yeah.
One thing I will lift up from both of those answers is that you talked about having someone from your academic program and someone that you've worked with. And so I think, showing those different kinds of experiences is also valuable. But the most important thing is that they know you really well. And like you said, Sebastian, they can really give that in-depth level of recommendation. Is there anything you would add to that, Maya?
I think you got it. Yeah, people who can really speak to your leadership skills and who can offer examples. And I will say that we do have really thorough instructions for recommenders. Sometimes we get asked the question, like, should we have the recommender be a Switzer fellow? Say there's a Switzer fellow who works at the graduate program that you're in. And I would only say yes to that if it's someone who knows you really well, because the most important piece is that it's someone who can give examples about you and your leadership skills and commitment to environmental work. And if that doesn't fit into the perfect box of like two academic folks or one academic person and one employer, that does not matter. Definitely choose the two people who you feel can speak best on your behalf.
Thanks. Another question that we got is, are you eligible to receive the Switzer Fellowship for your studies if you have previously received other funding? And the answer is yes. And another question, this one is for you, Maya, is about eligibility. Is the eligibility, the geographic eligibility based on where the school is located or where the fellow personally lives?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is based on where the school is located. So now, a lot of folks in their graduate programs aren't necessarily based in the area where the school is located. Maybe they're doing research somewhere else, or some programs are shifted online. But it is based on where your school is located. So, for example, if you live in California, I think I saw this come up in the chat, and you're enrolled in an online program in a school based in New Mexico, you would not be eligible to apply even though you live in California, because it's based on where the school is.
Great. I think that those are the questions that I have seen come in on the chat so far. So if people have questions that have not already been answered, please enter them in on the chat. And if there's anything that you had prepared to share, Maya, that we haven't covered yet, this would be a good time.
Great. Yeah. Something else I will share in reference to eligibility, because it's definitely the question that I am asked the most, is about the specific timing of when folks can apply, in particular for people who are just starting PhD programs or who are uncertain about if they're going to move from a master's to a PhD program. And the eligibility really is based on the relationship to where you are in your program. And so if you are currently a PhD student, we don't recommend you apply until 3 years of your study, or if you're going to complete your qualifying exams by next July 2025, because we're really focused on supporting fellows who will go on to that applied work and who are further along in the program, both because then the fellowship is closer to that time period when they are going to move on from the graduate program and start applying the things that they've learned, but also because we found that those applicants are much more competitive when compared to PhD candidates who are in the first year of their program, because they are more able to tell that story of what their work looks like with more years. And if you are in a master's program, it must be your terminal degree. So if you are transitioning from a master's to a PhD, then your eligibility shifts to the PhD program eligibility. And so you can't apply in that first year of the PhD or last year of your master's. If you are assuming that the master's or a JD or something similar is going to be your terminal degree, then we invite you to apply in your second year of the master's program, unless it's a 1-year program. If it is a 1-year program, you can apply before you're in your program, because otherwise you would never be able to apply. But you would need to be accepted before your interview, when your interview happens in May. So just for that round of eligibility, to cover that. And I see a raised hand from Emma.
Hi, I just wanted to clarify on the eligibility based on location or accreditation for a master's program. Because in the chat, I was told accreditation. However, I heard that it was based on physical location. If a school is located in, say, West Virginia, but is accredited in California and recognized by, I believe, I wrote it down in the chat, but recognized in California, and I am also stationed in California, would I be eligible?
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. So applicants must be enrolled in an accredited graduate institution in California or one of the 6 New England states. So does that answer the question, Emma?
So does that mean if they're physically not located in California but are accredited in California, that counts? Or is that a no?
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is if the graduate program is accredited in California but actually based somewhere else, does that count as an eligible graduate program?
Yeah.
Great. I am not entirely sure on that one. Cora, do you know the answer to that question?
I think we have gotten this question before, and I think it is accreditation based, but I think we can follow up with you, Emma, via email to answer that question in more detail. So yeah, the email for those kinds of questions is lane@switzernetwork.org, and I will put that in the chat for anyone who has more of those kind of specific, less typical situations. Then I think we'll be able to do better diligence to answering your question via email.
Okay, thank you so much.
We had a couple more questions coming in about eligibility and the timeline, Maya. Olivia asked about their program has a qualifying exam during the first year, and then asked, would applying as a second-year PhD student still be too early?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So technically, according to the eligibility, you need to either have completed 3 years of doctoral work or passed your qualifying exams by July 1st, 2025. So if you have already passed your qualifying exams and that's before 3 years, you are eligible to apply. It may be the case that your application is a little less competitive if you're earlier in your PhD program. And so not saying that it's totally impossible, but we have found that specifically for PhD candidates, they are most successful applying after 3 years. But you are eligible if you meet either of those criteria.
And then we also had a clarifying question on the master's application timeline. Can you go over that again?
Yes, for master's students, we recommend that they apply in their second year of their program unless it is a 1-year master's. So if it's a 1-year master's, typically those folks will need to apply before they've even been fully accepted in the program because you must be enrolled for the full year of your fellowship. So that would be 2025 into 2026. And so those folks can apply before they've been accepted. But if you are currently a master's student and you're in your first year and next year would be your second year, then you can apply for that year. And I see one more eligibility question in the chat about PhD students. So the question was, when does the PhD student need to have completed 3 years to be eligible, which makes sense as a question because our application comes in sort of in the middle of most people's academic years. And so the end of your 3 years would be by July 1st, 2025. So you might be applying when you've only done 2.5 years, but you would start your fellowship when you've gone through 3 years of your program.
And I'll just add, it can sometimes be hard to take in dates and those kinds of things in this verbal format. And all of this is spelled out in a lot of detail on the Become a Fellow website, which I've just linked in the chat. So again, that's a great resource to really dig into the FAQs and all the information on the website to help answer your questions. And then you do not need to have all of your questions answered today at this session. We will respond to questions via email as well if something is still lingering. I think Chris has their hand raised.
Thanks. Sorry, I joined late. I couldn't make it until just a couple of minutes ago. I'm apologies if this is a question that's already been answered. This is not going to be the first time I'm applying for the Switzer Fellowship. I did not get it in my previous attempt at applying, and so I just wanted to know if there are specific things that the Switzer Fellowship is looking for reapplicants, whether that is like, is it our previous application outcomes like basically reviewed, or is it everyone treated as a blank slate coming in? Yeah, I just wanted to better understand what I can do to stand out as a reapplicant.
That is a great question, Chris. Everyone is considered in a blank slate. And in fact, the people reviewing your application will likely be different than the people who reviewed it in past years, because we have so many different fellows who review applications, and depending on what phase of the process your application was removed, that determines how many fellows had seen it at that point and who had seen it. And so if you are applying again, likely the reason that your application will be stronger, when we have seen successful applicants, which a lot of applicants actually do get it on their second attempt, especially PhD candidates who have more of a buffered time window, so they could apply perhaps multiple times in a way that master's students are more limited. But folks have gotten it on their second or third application. And what we have heard from the reviewers that makes them stand out is that they are more clear on their story. So they can state more clearly, this is the applied work that I want to do. This is who I am. This is how I can see the Switzer Fellowship contributing to the work that I'm doing now. And so it's less that they have already applied before, but more that they are able to get even more clear the second time around. And the advice that I would give, and this is what I mentioned before for everyone, is to pull up your application from last year, pull up the evaluation rubric, and maybe pass it to someone and say, where do you see me missing some of these pieces in the rubric that I can really put my energy in strengthening? Or if you want to start fresh, use that fresh application in the rubric to really see, are you making all of those links really clear so that it would stand out to someone who has never met you before and is only experiencing you on paper?
Got it. Thanks.
I want to direct a question to Vita and Sebastian now. Alexander asked, what were some of the useful pointers that you received from fellows before applying? And can you talk about your experiences with Switzer activities, like the retreats? So those are two separate questions. Feel free to answer one or both of them.
Yeah, I can talk about the second part, because I didn't really talk to a lot of fellows during my application process. So outside of just my advisor, and we also wanted to keep it so there wasn't any advantages. So our communication was very limited during the application process. But for the retreats, I freaking love those things. So we had 2 retreats, one in the fall and one in the spring, and the locations tend to vary. And the retreats, honestly, they were not what I expected, but I loved them. So in the sense of, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about my emotions, how I process, how I communicate. So the skills that I acquired while at these retreats were rather abstract. So it wasn't like straight up professional development. It was life skills that we can use in multiple spaces. And it also created opportunities for us as a cohort to really become vulnerable with one another and really just learn from each other emotionally as well. So I think that for me is like the highlights of experiences for Switzer, both retreats. It was just how vulnerable we could all be with one another, and being able to support each other. But realistically, I think the retreats are unique for every cohort, and you kind of get what you put into it. I've talked about my experience and our experience in the retreats, and I don't hear a lot of, oh yeah, that's the same thing that I went through. It'll be like, oh yeah, bits and pieces sound very familiar, but like this is what we did instead. So hopefully that helps.
Thanks, Sebastian. Vita, would you add anything to that, either about your experiences with the activities and retreats, or useful pointers from fellows while you were applying?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question. I feel as though interacting with other fellows is really important to my process, specifically like the interviews. I didn't receive a lot of support for the written component, but yeah, for the interviews, it was great to have other people to bounce um, ideas off of. The Switzer fellows, some of them are willing to share like aspects of their application and show you what like successful applications look like. So like having something like that as a guide is really helpful. Um, and my experience with the retreats have been nothing but wonderful. I uh, Sebastian and I actually met at the retreat, and or yeah, at both of the retreats, we that's like an opportunity to be able to connect with your cohort and again, it becomes not just, this cash award that you receive, but, a community that you're forming. And yeah, there's usually, for the fellowship year, there are two in the year. And that's just like a great opportunity to really to bond and form friendships, as well as get to interact with the location that is, I think, very thoughtfully curated and chosen, with different experiences. And in Minneapolis this last year, we visited the site where George Floyd was murdered, and getting to hear accounts from community members around uh, what the community and political environment has been after in the aftermath. So, anyways, like I feel as though Switzer thinks very thoughtfully about like spaces of grief and spaces of also environmental leadership. We visited Owamni, like an indigenous restaurant as well, where there's a rich cultural tradition. Anyways, I'm talking way too long, but I just can't emphasize enough how transformative of an experience the retreats are.
Thanks, Vita. Vita, I'll start with you with this one as well, and then we can pass it to Maya to flesh it out. There's a question about advice for master's applicants. You obviously would have less experience in your degree program than a third-year PhD candidate. So what did you do to stand out in the application process around that?
That's a great question. I honestly did. I think I'd have to look back at my application. I don't know if I'm able to answer that right off like the bat in terms of being specific. Um, if I remember correctly, I did kind of tell a bit of my story, extending, beyond um, my graduate experience, if I recall correctly, and thinking more about, what my journey into water justice has looked like, even from my early life, going into my undergraduate work and into my graduate work. So even though it's 1 year of a graduate program, I feel like I carried like a lifetime of stories and experiences that I could share.
Thanks, Vita. Maya, what would you add for master's applicants?
Yeah, I would say that we are looking for both experienced and emerging leaders, and the goal is to have a cohort that is not all the same. And so that is one way that plays out is in having master's students and PhD students together. And most cohorts end up being about 10 master's students and 10 PhD students. And so I would not say that the master's applicants are directly competing with the PhD candidates. That is definitely not how we approach the selection process. Each person is really looked at as an individual and specifically looking for leadership potential and existing leadership experience. And so if you are a master's applicant, the reviewers know that you're not a PhD student. You haven't been studying this one specific topic for 3, 4, 5 years. Your application looks really different. And for both candidates, the thing that feels really important is, again, that clear story of how do you want to apply what you're learning? You got this degree for a reason. How do you want to apply that? And where do you see your leadership fitting into that? And then another layer of how do you see the Switzer Fellowship and network supporting you in your continuous leadership throughout your career? So I don't have any specific advice for master's candidates in comparison to PhD candidates because each person is really viewed on an individual basis.
Thanks, Maya. We also had a question about how long are the retreats, and they are a long weekend, once in the fall and once in the spring. And I believe that the dates for that will be posted on our website once they are confirmed. And then we also had a question about if fellows connect outside of the retreats, either with the other fellows in their region or as a whole cohort. And just wanted to share that that is an option to do so. We offer a virtual gathering in between the retreats for fellows who want to connect with everyone in their cohort who is able to make it to that in the winter. And then also some cohorts have decided to gather on their own. And I think that there were some fellows from the California group from last year's cohort that did get together after their fellowship year or at the end of their fellowship year. So that is, there's opportunities to do that as well. And there are also opportunities to gather with other Switzer fellows outside of your cohort. Occasionally, Switzer fellows will host networking gatherings. In person, we also have online networking gatherings and things like professional development webinars and online courses that sometimes are available for Switzer fellows. So we really do have a robust programming that is available for Switzer fellows, both during your fellowship year and for life. Like Vita said, you really are part of the Switzer network for life. Maya, is there anything you would like to do to close this up? We have a few minutes left. If there are any last minute questions, folks can enter them in.
Well, if any last minute questions come in, I'm happy to answer them, but I really want to share that I encourage everyone to really be yourself in the application, to find recommendation writers who also know you and can celebrate who you are. We get feedback from folks a lot that they feel a little bit hesitant to apply because they're not sure that they are quote unquote worthy of a fellowship like this. And you are all worthy of something like this. It isn't a question of worth. At this point in the application process, it's a question of being able to communicate who you are so that the reviewers can see that and understand, and then see how you would check off all of the things in the rubric, but more than that, see your leadership and see how you would be part of the Switzer network. And so highly, highly encourage you to reflect for yourself, like, who are you as a leader and why do you want to be part of the Switzer Fellowship? We hear from fellows all the time that they at first applied just to have some graduate funding because that is essential and graduate programs are expensive. And as they got deeper into it, they realized that actually the benefit of Switzer was the network and this cohort community, and it went way beyond that funding. And so encourage you to have that broad lens when you're applying and think about why do you want to be part of a network like this and have these experiences that go beyond just the $17,000, although that is also a very big benefit of having this award. Did any other questions come in that time, Cora?
I haven't seen any.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming today. And a huge thank you to Sebastian and Vita for sharing your experience and your time with us. Your perspective really does matter. And for folks who don't know other Switzer Fellows, you don't have Switzer Fellows at your institution, please check out our website and ask to be connected to one if that's something that's of interest to you, because we would love to support you in your process. Thanks everyone for coming today, and I'll pass it to Cora for any closing words.
I do not have anything else to say. Thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to all of your applications. Vida, Sebastian, anything you would like to sign off with?
Yeah, I wish I got to hear from all of you. I feel as though, Switzer just attracts such an amazing variety of scientists and environmentalists and people of all different backgrounds and areas of study, and I hope I get to see you all at different parts in the application process. Yeah, great to chat.
Yeah, grateful for the opportunity to share my story. So thanks to you all for the platform and just being able to share my experience. And yeah, just good luck, be yourself, stay honest to who you are as a person, and the rest will take care of itself. So yeah, best of luck.
That's also wonderful life advice. Thank you all so much. Really good to be in this virtual space with you today.
Bye, everyone.